Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. This is our monthly Active Claremont membership meeting. Tonight we have Mayor Ed Reece, who's going to speak a little bit about the city and his plans for mayor. Before we get started though, I want to make a couple of announcements. First and foremost, this Saturday, trash pickup. We're going to be meeting at 8 a.m. at St. Luke's Church, corner of Indian Hill and Baseline. And we'll be picking up some trash and cleaning up Baseline Road. We'll have all the equipment, and you just need to bring yourself and some comfortable shoes. We'll have sign-ups, and we'll be out there until 10 a.m. picking up trash. Also, dues are due. So if you are a member of Active Claremont and you are here and you have not paid your dues for the 2023 year, you can see Brian in the back, and he will very happily take your due money. And also, if you're here and you are not a member, Brian can also sign you up and then take your due money. It's only $10 for an individual membership, $15 for a family membership, and very, very low cost. Furthermore, we have a couple personnel changes. So first and foremost, Bill Bueller will be taking over as president for the 2023 year, and I'll be moving to immediate past president. Bill is out of town tonight, so he's not here at this meeting, but you guys will see him next month. And he was on the board as a member, volunteer coordinator. We will also have a new second VP, John Scott. John, you can wave hi wherever you are. He's going to be helping us out with volunteer coordinating and helping us out with trash pickup.
No VP was associated, I thought it was volunteer coordinator.
Oh, that's okay. It's
Surprise, surprise.
Hey, what's in a name? What's in a name? And Russ is going to be helping us out with some audio and visual. We're going to try to step up our game a little bit with some of the recording processes and things that are going on. So you'll see him around, and he'll have the title as the first VP because he'll be coordinating some of the speakers and helping us out with audio-visual presentations. And as another announcement, next month we have a great speaker. We have Catherine Barger, County Supervisor. It's going to be a very, very good meeting. We're hoping for a big turnout. We're going to be in the big room for that meeting. So you're going to see some promotion about that. We'll be in the Courier and things like that. Please tell any friends, any local community members. It does not have to just be Claremont residents. Catherine Barger's territory is all over our area, Laverne, Claremont. So please invite neighbors from other cities. We'd love to have them. And they too can join Active Claremont, even if they're not from Claremont. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Ed Reece so that he can begin his presentation.
Good evening. So, first I wanted to say thank you to Active Claremont for inviting me tonight and allowing me the opportunity to share a little bit about my thoughts about where we're at in the city and some areas of focus for me this year, along with sharing with you about the state of the city, where we are today. And so at the city council meeting, a reorganization in December, I asked my fellow council members, commissioners, and staff to recommit to our established priorities. In early 2022, the City Council held a community workshop to discuss our priorities and objectives for the next few years. The city held 3 community focus groups and distributed a survey to gather input from the community on what they felt were priority issues. The City Council used this input to reaffirm the city's existing priorities and added a new priority: developing anti-discrimination, anti-racist policies and programs to achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion. At that council meeting, the council unanimously passed a resolution. At this last council meeting, which would have been 2 nights ago, we unanimously passed a resolution condemning hate crime, hate speech, and hate speech propaganda, and any acts of hate or discrimination against members of our community. The council also identified 31 objectives to help further the city's priorities. During the 2024 budget cycle, the City Council staff will use these priorities and objectives to guide our work and stay focused on moving policies and projects forward. As we continue into 2023, I'm excited about the momentum and the possible opportunities of this new year. When I first discovered Claremont in the mid-'80s, I was kind of struck by this magical place. I decided to make this place my home because of the community, and quite frankly, it's a great place to live, work, play, and in my case, raise a dog family. I want to share with you some of the items that I want to focus over this year. Being fiscally sound is the basis for all cities' programming, services, staff recruitment, and retention, all of which contribute to the long-term sustainability of Claremont. We've made a significant turnaround in the past few years, and my interest is continuing to improve our financial health. Our businesses are an essential component of the city's success. This year, we'll be working on quality of life issues critical to Claremont residents, businesses, and visitors. Staff will be working to address the prostitution, human trafficking, burglaries, and traffic safety concerns. Through our partnerships with the community organizations like Tri-City Mental Health, we'll be working to meet the needs of the unhoused in our community, including increasing housing and mental health services. One of the most significant city projects city staff has been working on is the housing element update. The housing element is part of the city's general plan and sets a vision for the affordable housing for the next several years. The housing element update is required by the state of all cities and must be approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. The housing update includes a demographic profile of the city, an analysis of opportunities and constraints for new development and new housing, including affordable housing, and an elevation of the existing housing programs. The housing element also sets forth a suite of new implementation programs to facilitate the creation of new housing opportunities in the city and protect the city's existing affordable housing stock. Additionally, it identifies potential sites and retooled development standards for these sites in order to accommodate the state's requirement for Claremont to plan for an additional 1,711 new housing units between now and 2029. Now, Claremont, like all cities in California, is adjusting to new state laws that limit local control over the creation of housing. Aimed at addressing the state's housing crisis, legislators passed a series of bills to reduce the amount of review and restrict conditions cities may place on housing density, location, and zoning. Under the new laws, affordable and supportive housing projects may now be approved at a staff level if they're conforming to zoning designations and will not be subject to public hearings or commission review. The Docent townhomes on Indian Hill Boulevard are now in the sales phase, and the Old Schoolhouse apartments will be renting soon. The Old Schoolhouse Garden Apartments will take applications for 16 affordable units this March. The City Council approved the South Village vesting tentative tract maps in January. The development by Village Partners complies with the Village South specific plan and will feature opportunities for commercial and retail in addition to housing and other developments. The development will include 705 residential units, 144,000 square feet of commercial and retail space, and 1,500 parking spaces. The mixed-use development will be constructed in 3 phases, and the development will also retain the historic Vortex building as a public food hall. Over the last 2 years, the city has worked with the County of Los Angeles to connect businesses with grant and loan programs to offset the impact of the pandemic. The city has also allocated $400,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding to provide grants to businesses located in Claremont to continue their economic recovery. This program is currently under development. The City Council also approved $200,000 in ARPA funds for tax relief programs for businesses. Under the program, approximately 1,500 licensed businesses in Claremont will receive a waiver of their base business license tax for 2022 to 2023. The City Council has also allocated ARPA funds for future programs that look at reducing parking demand in the commercial areas, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and supporting local businesses through rebates for employees of the village businesses to use alternative modes of transportation. Staff will bring details of these programs for consideration to the council later this year. So an important item that a lot of people have asked me about is our alfresco program. During the height of the pandemic, the city developed the Claremont alfresco dining program that permitted parklets in the public right-of-way and streamlined the application process for other types of outdoor seating. The City Council will consider making the park program permanent at the February 28th meeting upcoming. And however, the city has gone and gathered community input and thousands of responses. The City Council will take the community input from the surveys and letters and emails from community members and feedback from our business community as well. All of that will be taken into account and whether to approve conditions for a permanent outdoor parklet program. In May of 2022, the City Council allocated $4.5 million of the $8.7 million the city received from the American Rescue Plan Act funding. In June, the City Council adopted a 2-year budget that continues to provide the high level of service expected in Claremont and maintains the quality programs and services that contribute to the quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors to our city. This budget conservatively estimates the city's revenues, maximizes available resources, and prudently recommends expenditures to work towards achieving the priorities and objectives established previously by City Council. The balanced budget not only meets the operational needs of the city, but it also sets aside funding for addressing long-term pension liabilities and replenish the city's general fund reserve balance. So another program which has become very popular, we put together a program to address the needs of affordable housing stock in Claremont. And in the City Council, went ahead and improved $400,000 in funding for an accessory dwelling unit or ADU grant program. Eligible homeowners can receive $20,000 if they rent their new ADU or junior ADU at a moderate, affordable rate to an income-eligible tenant for at least 3 years. The city began accepting applications in January and allocated $200,000 of the $400,000 total budgeted over the next 2 years. In just 2 days, the city had applications for double the amount of allocated funds. So it has become a very popular program in assisting with building out ADUs. One thing I want to touch back on is our unhoused population and those risking potentially losing their home. We're providing a number of services, but we're also looking at our partnership with Tri-City Mental Health. And our staff works with Tri-City Mental Health on several programs that focus on mental health and shelter and addiction and medical care and food stability. And the city continues to have a community navigator available to assist individuals that are experiencing these problems. One program that I'm very proud of that we established, the council established a couple of years ago, is our PACT program, our Psychiatric Assessment Care Team. The program provides trained mental health and social service professionals on nonviolent, non-criminal police calls for service to respond to the mental health crisis. PACT members have accompanied officers on response calls and provided case management services to ensure individuals are getting the services they need. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the other priorities, as I talked earlier about quality of life. Over the past few years, we've seen increased crime in deteriorated commercial areas near the 10 freeway. The Claremont Police Department has conducted targeted enforcement with the assistance of the City of Pomona's Human Trafficking Task Force in and around the three motel areas, the 3 motels in the area. These sting operations have resulted in over 30 arrests. Between September 20th and September 22, Claremont Police received 1,619 calls for service at Motel 6 alone, including officer-initiated calls such as a welfare check. In that same period, authorities received over 2,800 calls for service and made a combined 238 arrests at the 3 hotels. To address the many issues around the motels, the Police Commission created an ad hoc committee to study the existing hotel-motel ordinance and the city's other nuisance abatement options. The Police Commission and the Planning Commission made recommendations, and those will be incorporated into a future draft ordinance. There is a proposal for a new hotel coming forward. The new hotel at the former Knights Inn site was a proposal specifically on easement, was approved by the City Council just 2 days ago. Sagemont Hotels purchased the Claremont Knights Inn on Indian Hill Boulevard and is proposing to replace it with a new Residence Inn by Marriott. The proposal will change the existing 56-room Knights Inn and create a new 120-room Residence Inn. The project will require an amendment, and that amendment was, part of that amendment was completed 2 nights ago. Later this year, an item that people have asked me about, the city will be evaluating a potential regulatory framework for commercial cannabis. In November, Claremont voters passed a cannabis tax measure that set forth tax rates for commercial cannabis. With the tax rates approved, the city will work with the community to determine if a cannabis program should be authorized in Claremont. Of course, the first step in this process is to conduct an extensive outreach to the community. The city will also be completing a series of traffic studies this year that will inform street improvements for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. And the City Council approved funding in the budget to complete these studies. The design of the Town Avenue Complete Streets Improvement Project is complete, and the city has received bids for this project. Staff is finalizing the funding and anticipates the bid to be awarded potentially later this month. Construction on the Foothill Gold Line, which I was asked about this evening, continues. Gary Avenue will close for work on the Pomona Station until mid-March. This phase is set to terminate, the current phase of the Gold Line is set to terminate at the Pomona Station. In January last month, I was reappointed as chairman of the Foothill Gold Line Construction Authority Board of Directors. And as some of you may know, the unfunded extension from Pomona to Montclair has a price tag of $798 million. I am committed, however, to working with state and regional partners to secure the funding necessary to complete this final segment. The Wilderness Park will have some new park signage and habitat restored. The funding for the Wilderness Park was received from a over $700,000 grant from the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, and I want to thank the Conservancy for their support of that. On April 4th, just a couple months away, the Heart of the Foothills Open Streets event will come through Claremont, and the event will close portions of the street to vehicles to allow bikes to ride the streets from Claremont through Pomona, Laverne, and San Dimas. Active SGV is hosting the event from its partner cities. 4th of July. A lot of people like 4th of July. I know I do. The 4th of July fireworks show will return this year. I hear the cheers. However, it will return with a little bit of water-saving modifications, but it'll be the same fun. It'll be the same family fun event. The Independence Day Committee is working on the details of this event. We also will be bringing back our concerts and movies in the park. And if you enjoyed the utility boxes that are painted around town, more of those are coming soon. A lot is going on. I went through a lot just now of everything that's happening, everything that is going to happen. And really, it's all about the community coming together, working together to make all of this a reality. I want to share that from my perspective, government shouldn't be reactive, but government should be collaborative. Government should be willing to be flexible and work with our community. And so my hope is that as we move through some of these things, that we can get your support to be collaborative, your support to complete some of these goals and priorities. We also want to hear from you. So as we look at future priorities, future objectives, there's an opportunity to get engaged in that, and that will be this coming, basically 1 year from now, in January of next year, as we set new priorities and new goals. And I want to encourage you to get engaged in that process as well. So again, I appreciate you allowing me to go through some of the things that have been happening, and I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. If there's something that I'm unaware of, or information I'm unaware of, I'd be happy to get you that answer, work with staff to get you that answer. Paul, or go ahead.
I have a question about the residents.
Residence Inn by Marriott?
Residents Inn. There was a question about the setback
Yes,
of that. Was that resolved?
it was. That setback was resolved on Tuesday. Council approved the modified setback.
And what is that?
Modified setback is an average of 15 feet. And the neighbors across the street, actually, one of the neighbors showed up and was in support, expressed support of the development, the potential development, and the setback.
What's
Paul.
our current unfunded pension liability?
So right now, we're basically in the $40 million mark currently, which is a reduction from where we were approximately 3 years ago. At 3 years ago, we were closer to 60 million. Joey?
A question about the goal line. You said it's 700 some odd million that would be needed to complete the extension.
Correct.
That sounds like a very large number.
It is a large number.
So what avenues, I know you mentioned, there would be some grant programs and things like that. How much money is available, and do you think that's a figure that would be able to be reached, and where is that money coming from?
So it's likely the money is going to come from a variety of sources. It can come from LA Metro. Some of it will potentially come from LA Metro. Some of it may come from from Cal STA, state agency that oversees funding for transportation projects. And so there's a number of avenues in which funding can come from. As in our business, we call that the different colors of money. And but more specifically, right now, we're really trying to work with Metro to come up with some additional dollars that we can do some preliminary work, do some underground work, the work that's necessary to get us to that next phase of developing moving track and adding platforms and all of that. So right now we're kind of taking bite-sized chunks at it, trying to take some bite-sized chunks at it.
Thank you.
Sue?
Yeah. Housing element.
Housing element.
Housing element. This community has a history of what they don't want they put in the south part of town. And that's historical. I can quote numbers that say that. And some of the preliminary housing element even had 5-story buildings or 4-story buildings next to single-family buildings, right away next to single-family. Have you seen it lately? Is the south part of town again going to become the New York of Claremont? Or is there going to be some respect for the single-family homes and even 2-story apartments and things that are and 2-story homes that are in the south part of town? Because and I'm horrified by the fact that the staff can just decide you know, what goes in and what doesn't go in. So can you answer, and can you tell me whether or not, you mean the staff can make decisions based on just some zoning, without any public input?
Yeah, so there is public input in the housing element process.
Could you repeat the question?
Well, I'm talking about later, yeah.
Yeah, so the question was housing element, and more specifically around South Claremont, and South Claremont being
Well, the whole town.
the most impacted in regards to the housing element, and then the process in which staff uses to develop the housing element.
Well, in the process they will use later to decide what goes in and what doesn't go in, if they can do it all by themselves.
So, so a number of things. Let's start with your first part of your question, which is whether or not there would be a disproportionate amount of the housing element gets completed in South Claremont versus the rest of the town. And I can tell you that from my position that in regards to housing, housing should be spread throughout the community. And that's one of the things why I pushed to have our ADU grant program, and that I brought that to the city manager and said, hey, I think we need to do this program, because what ADUs do is it allows for our housing stock to be diversified throughout our community, from the north, from the south, from the east to the west, and allows our community to develop this additional housing stock throughout versus concentrating everything in one area. And so this is not going to solve all of our housing issues, but every ADU unit that is built does count towards our numbers with RENA, and so that's helpful. But in regards to South Claremont, or that portion of town, I will share that it's my position that, again, we should diversify all of our housing stock throughout the community and not just concentrate in one area. In regards to the element and the way staff develops the element, there is a input process, a community input process on the element. Staff does make a recommendation, and that recommendation then is forwarded to council. And council makes the final decision on the final element plan that ultimately the state approves. In regards to what should be built out and what doesn't get built out, I think there's a combination of factors that could play into that. I think partially market conditions play into that. I think also additionally kind of need, where the need might be. I think I go back though to the first question, which is I think we should, as a council and as staff, there should be diversity throughout the city on where developments are built and how developments are, what areas the developments are built in. And so it's my hope that we'll find ourselves in that better space as we move forward. I recognize that South Claremont has felt a lot over the number of years. And so my hope is that we'll find a better space in moving those development opportunities throughout the city. Jeff?
Yeah, along the same housing element and RENA numbers and so forth, how about the Claremont colleges? They've actually built quite a few housing units, I think, if not dozens, maybe hundreds in recent years. Can those also be counted for this element? So we don't have to rush this other type of housing. We know some of the housing that's in current plans will be destructive to the community in so many different ways, especially for public safety. So can all this new housing at the Claremont colleges that's recently be built or has been built, can that contribute toward it? And also, can we encourage the colleges, let them build they already have some 60-story structures there, 3 of them that were built several years ago. They can build more of them right in the middle of their campus. They got plenty of land, lots of big, beautiful grass lawns, doesn't impact anyone's privacy, and that kind of housing in the middle of the colleges is not going to impact public safety. And maybe the colleges can also be encouraged, as we know, many of us know, they've bought a lot of housing in certain neighborhoods like Arville Verde. How can they be encouraged? Why don't we sell all those houses open it up to the general public if the colleges can be allowed to build more housing on their own grounds? Most students are okay with the tall buildings on their grounds and like to be close to class. Who wants to be late to anything? Encourage the other housing stock to be sold, and can those housing units be contributed toward this housing number? So we don't have to sacrifice the rest of the city?
So it's a great question that I would have to circle back to give you a solid answer on in regards to the student housing, and I'm assuming you're talking about kind of the dorms and whatnot.
Yeah, that's housing. Because some of those.
Oh, sorry. Let me repeat your question for, I think, those that are that are going to watch the recording. Your question was in regards to the colleges, and more specifically the dorms that have been built and all the housing that has been built around the students. Can that count towards our RENA numbers? And then what about allowing them to build more within their property line and shifting the properties that they have outside of their traditional property line back to the public marketplace, if you will, and just continuing to build within their property line. And I believe that's what you said. So let me go back to the first part of that, which is do those dorms count towards RENA? I will have to get you a solid answer on that, but my initial sense on it, and my initial feeling on it is probably not, because that is not considered public housing and publicly available housing. So that would be that's my initial sense on it, but I'll be happy to circle back with staff and get you a confirmed answer. In regards to the colleges building on their property, yeah, they absolutely can submit their plans to do that and submit those to the Community Development Department and continue to build out and build up if that's what they have a desire to do. We have to go through the approval process and et cetera. I do know that I believe the approval process is a little different for educational institutions, but nonetheless, they still would have to go through their respective process. In regards to the homes or the properties that are outside of the traditional property lines, that's a tough one. I couldn't speak a lot to that because they, under law, have the right to own that space, and so I do get your point in the fact that, hey, that housing could go to the general public, the general population, to be able to use that housing, so I do get your point on that. Unfortunately, I think they have the right to maintain that property.
I know several faculty members that live in that housing. I think they use that to rent to faculty members because they have a hard time, what rents are.
Right.
And so that's.
And my encouragement is the more housing that's available, then the
Right,
more
but that,
affordable they
they're
become.
using them
Yeah.
for their faculty, so.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm encouraged, I'm glad to hear about the ADU popularity. What do the numbers look like there? How many ADUs did you guys budget for? And then you said it was double the application. And you said that would actually apply towards the 1,700 mandated, right?
Correct.
So it seems like a great way. I bet a lot of those ADUs are in northern Claremont. It seems like you've got local accountability. You're spreading out that population, the affordable housing throughout the whole city. I'll bet a lot of them are in North Claremont where they have big properties and
Are
do
they?
that.
I would be curious about that. How many were above baseline?
So I don't have the exact number of where within the city, but I can tell you that, we set aside $200,000 for this budget year and $200,000 for next budget year. So you can get up to $20,000. I think every single applicant, applied for the $20,000. So obviously that would be 10 grants this year and 10 grants next year. However, we did authorize for staff to review it, and if we needed to, bring forward the monies from next year into this year. So we potentially could have, 20 applicants right there that want to build ADUs under the grant
Just
program.
doing the numbers, obviously, it's very small compared to what we need. But I mean, at $20,000, 1,700 units, that's $34 million. That's the cost of one developer is getting to build one place for 30 units, which is, what a skewed joke. We could actually control that. Obviously, we're not paying for, we're all paying for it for tax dollars, obviously, but the city specifically isn't paying for that. So it seems like a good idea. The numbers are much higher than I thought. The second part of that was, it sounds like the city's just moving forward, state requirements. And I know, not you, but other council members are very dismissive of residents' concerns about particular developments. But how about, Huntington Beach, right? They're suing, they're pushing back. Their council has been elected to push back, to keep the coastal town, not urbanize, the city of Huntington Beach. Is there any sense that we could participate that, or wait and see what happens there? Or, any thinking and the city staff or city council members that might think, hey, maybe this is a good approach. Maybe we can listen to a very, a large portion of this population that is interested in not doing it this way, and just rolling over for the state and potentially ruining the town. Is there any talk of that at City Hall?
So just to restate your question, and I forgot to restate your first question, but on this one, in regards to just pushing back on state mandates and state requirements, and what appetite does City Hall, if you will, have to do that? So a couple thoughts. One is, we're still a small town, right? And so we don't have some of the budgets that Huntington Beach has or Santa Monica has. And Santa Monica is in the middle of a lawsuit right now in regards to districting. And I know that's a conversation our community has had before in regards to districting. And so we're waiting. As a small city that has not spent the millions and millions of dollars that they have on their lawsuit, we're waiting to see what comes out of that, because the results of that may provide a pathway for Claremont to go back to at-large versus the current districts we're in. I think the same thing is true to your comment in regards to Huntington Beach. There's probably potential opportunity in some of these other lawsuits to look and see what comes out of that, and can that apply for Claremont? And I think there would be appetite to apply some case law that would happen in another city. But right now, I would say that there's probably not a huge appetite to jump into the middle of a lawsuit or create a lawsuit. We've, when I took office 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, we were staring down over a $2 million structural deficit. And it's taken a lot of work and some tough decisions and a lot of effort by staff to change that. And the last 2 years, we've declared a surplus of $4.2 and $4.7 million. And so we have turned it around, and we've put ourselves in a better place. And we've taken some of those dollars to pay down our pension liabilities, to re-bolster our reserves, to address some of these quality of life issues. And as a matter of fact, some of that money is going now into an item that I pushed hard for, which was adding another police officer to our ranks. And on Tuesday, the City Council has approved an additional funding for another police officer, which brings us to 41 sworn officers assigned to the police department, a number we haven't seen since 1998. So we're getting to the right place, and we're turning things around. And what I don't want to do is, quite frankly, spend it all in a lawsuit. But if I can watch Huntington Beach, if I can watch Santa Monica, if there's opportunity to immediately see what happens there and go, okay, great, you've created a pathway, let's go ahead and take advantage of that. I think that's a prudent, more pragmatic way to go.
I appreciate that, and you're right, we're not big like Huntington Beach, but we're small like Sierra Madre, we're small like San Marino. We should be asking them, how are they doing it, because I don't.
They're not doing it like Arcadia, San Marino. So anyway,
Paul, go ahead.
Talking about police.
Yeah.
We've had thousands of calls for service from our police down to the motels. We've had hundreds of arrests. And I could be a drunk wino and think, we have a public nuisance. Said, guys, clean it up or we're going to pull your business license, because Claremont has the right to do that.
So we've taken a number of approaches on this, and as a matter of fact, I've had conversation with our city attorney and our city manager in regards to nuisance abatement and things of that nature. Sorry, let me go back to your question. Your question for those who are watching.
Have you threatened to pull their business license?
So, to my understanding, you can't just walk in and say, I'm going to threaten to pull your business license. There has to be kind of a case put together to do that. And so, in talking with, and having conversation with the city attorney and the city manager in regards to the motels, or I think you're referencing one motel in particular, in regards to the motels, or that motel, we are putting together, and they are keeping me in the loop in regards to what they're doing to develop the evidence necessary for a nuisance abatement. And so that is happening. In regards to the existing issues that are there, we are addressing the issues through a multi-pronged approach, from enforcement in the area through police operation, as well as through enforcement of existing code, and additionally through basically looking at the options necessary for this new hotel ordinance to provide additional enforcement mechanism, additional tools in our toolbox. The other thing I'll share is that in speaking with the DA's office, I was able to work with them to develop what's called stacking, the stacking of penalty. So if you're arrested on a charge today, and the DA says, well, this is your first offense, we're gonna cut you some slack, but you get arrested a second time. That slack that they're talking about really isn't a dismissal. It's kind of put on ice. And so if it happens again, what happens is they'll bring that original charge back, stack the second charge, and be able to then provide the opportunity to really have some type of enforcement or penalty for any crime that may have been committed by the individual or the suspect. But I think there's a few ways, and I think it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just one way. I can tell you that for those that may not be aware, that Motel 6 is up for sale, and so it is currently being advertised for sale. It was just price reduced, so if somebody has their credit card and is willing to pick it up, they just reduced the price, but it is for sale as well. Russ?
Multi-pronged question. If I do win the next $500 million lottery,
Sure.
I'll just buy the thing.
Okay, great. That's a good step.
If I get that, you mark my words, I'll just buy it and we'll do it. So you got a new police officer.
Yep.
Is there a thought to reignite the new police station idea? And as a suggestion, if you put the new police station where the crime is at the motel instead of the motel, the officers are already there.
Yeah, so your question...
Do two things at once.
Your question was in regards to the police station and rediscussing, bringing that conversation back up in regards to either building a new station, repairing the station, et cetera. I think your suggestion was to move the station
Put a
to
new station
where the existing motel is.
And that way you put the officers where the crime is, and they go like, oh, hi, you're all just go this way.
Yeah, no, I think I would say logistically, just from my immediate thoughts on what you're suggesting, logistically it's hard to put a station at the south end of town. And there's a benefit of having a station somewhere centered in town to get services through all parts of town. However, that doesn't mean that we couldn't do some type of program or work with those property owners to create some other opportunity, whether it's, I wouldn't call it a substation, but maybe there's a community station there, or an opportunity for officers to do their report writing down there and be able to be engaged, further engaged in the community, in that part of the neighborhood, I should say. And so there might be some creative ways to do kind of what you want, but not exactly move the whole department there. In regards to reigniting, just in general, the quality of the department, the building today, or whatnot, I can tell you that we actually have allocated some funds and working on making some improvement. One of those improvements is to the women's locker room and providing a more equitable space for our women police officers, which amazingly is, if you have not seen our officers recently, we have a lot, we are getting more and more female police officers, which is fantastic. And so we need to make sure that they're well taken care of.
Perfect. Just put the jail at the
Put the jail at the motel, all right? Linda?
Do you know what the fees are for an ADU and how long it will take to process?
What the fees are? I don't off the top of my head, because I think the fees are based on a number of factors, the cost of construction, maybe the size, the square footage, et cetera. So I couldn't tell you the exact fees, but in talking with staff, I think they range, there's kind of a range, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head in regards to your question was fees of ADUs. To my understanding, it's somewhere, depending on the size, junior ADU versus ADU, I want to remember somewhere around the 8,000 and below, depending on where it stands on the size of the ADUs, et cetera, as I recall. But I can get you a more definitive answer if you want to reach out to me.
And how long does it take to process an application or a building permits?
So application on ADUs vary depending on the number of ADUs. Right now, they're pretty slammed, right? And right now we're short-staffed a little bit within the community development department. So probably is more extended time than we'd like at this point. But I can tell you that one thing that we are working on is creating kind of an express option. And what I mean by that is putting together some designs that would be somewhat universal throughout the community, and putting together some pre-made or some pre-designs that that you could select and almost be express routed into building the ADU. Because you've picked a design that's already pre-approved, it's already fits and conforms to the process and standards here in Claremont. So we are working on that as well to try to provide some expedited option.
Well, I spoke with someone recently who said they put an application in for an ADU a year and a half ago, and they still haven't gotten a response from the city.
So that I would consider that to be unusual. If you want to have that person reach out to me, that would be great, because I would consider a year and a half and no response to be highly unusual.
They said they lost the plans a couple of times.
Yeah, I know we had some turnover in that department, but nonetheless, I would find that.
They've lost my plans too.
That's true, I had to pay twice.
Yeah, we had to pay again.
Okay, bring those to, email me, please email me, bring those to my attention so I can address it, see what's going on.
Can I say something about students?
About who?
I would love.
Students?
I would love to see what Jeff was referring to. In the census, they counted the students, okay? And then now the bills are coming forward and students are an element of who you can house in affordable housing. Then why are we not counting? And why are we not, then I would love to see the city council put their, it doesn't have to be a suit. Go up to Portofino, go to Holden and say, this is happening. Now, when are you gonna let us count the dorms that we have, all the dorms in town that are housing low-income folks who are students? And you're counting, now you're talking about students out of Sacramento as being low income. I would love to see you guys flex your muscles. And I know that there's maybe a consensus, but I know that, the public would like to see that too. And rather than rolling over while the state rolls over the communities that we all love.
You've got a lot of juice with the California League of Cities, don't you?
So the League of Cities is, I'll come back to you, Paul, in a sec. So your question was, council communicating to our state elected in regards to the student, housing and allowing that to be part of the program. Part of the RENA numbers. Again, I don't know if they are or aren't. That was my initial sense, right? But Jeff, if it's something you want to know for sure, hit me up and we'll get you that answer. But in regards to your question about flexing the muscle and whatnot, I can tell you, I can tell you that I haven't been in the gym in a while. So, but outside of that. We can, and there's a number of things that I do talk to Portofino and Holden about. But at the end of the day, they have to still get, to change law, right? They have to still get the majority of every other member in the legislature to get on board. It's quite a big lift. It's quite a big lift, but I'm happy to have that conversation.
I think what the citizens of this community would like to see, and I know you, and I know that you would like it too, would like to see is our council starts to let the legislature know that we have a community that we like to keep a little like our community, the way our community has been. And now so really use the citizens. Let the citizens come and I think we can achieve some consensus about that.
Well, yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Sue. You're saying, hey, besides flexing the muscle and flexing our muscle and kind of championing what the community wants, that the community also gets engaged and community also is there. And that goes back to what I shared with you earlier, right? A collaborative government versus a reactive government. And so I think it's a fantastic idea. And so if it can't always be your council's voice, right? Because to the elected, I'm still, while I represent, in my mind, 37,000 people, and sometimes that's not loud enough. And so if I can get community members engaged, community members there with me, that is fantastic.
There's some elections coming up.
There is some elections coming up. And getting engaged, potentially, the community getting engaged with those potential candidates as well. And having dialogue with those potential candidates up front about what we want as a community, I think is an important process. But that requires, again, engagement and collaboration from the community as well, and not just council. Paul, you had a...
I spoke out of turn, I apologize.
No worries.
About the
League of Cities.
With the League of California, it appears from our standpoint that crooked developers paid off people in Sacramento. And it appears that, we, the people, have the League of California Cities, which is an arm of our local government, and it appears that we should have enough juice to not get steamrolled, and it appears we're getting steamrolled.
So in regards to the League of California Cities, your question is, they should have some juice as an organization. They do. However, I can tell you that, I'm engaged in the League of California Cities on a number of fronts, and there seems to be sometimes issue of consensus among the league and the league members. And so that's a problem, right? Because if you're gonna charge forward, everybody has to be on the same page. And I'm noticing that there is some sometimes issues of consensus. And I don't know if it's at times, sometimes it feels like Northern California versus Southern California. Sometimes it feels like your Central Valleys versus your urbans. And so it's very dynamic. It's very interesting. But I would say overall, they're a great organization, but they probably don't have the influence they did 20 years ago. And but to answer your question, Jim.
So 2 nights ago, the council asked Adam Perry to draft a letter where they could send it in. And I noticed that Claremont, like back when the housing element was being discussed, there were letters coming in from Upland and Laverne and San Dimas, everybody but Claremont. So I would like to have these issues put up and discussed in the city. So at least we take an official stand on some of these issues that really don't make sense to us. And if it makes sense to a couple of council members, I'd like to see the vote. I would like to take a stand, and then we can use, our informal ways of talking to people. But let's take an official stand on some of these things, because it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
And then I'll stop. The housing element is coming up. Now, what strikes me is in Larkin Place, it was zoned for 30 units an acre. But then by the time you did all the by right additions from the state, it ends up about 60 units, doubled. And that's just atrocious to me. So when we have new zoning being proposed, and our planning department proposed 60 units an acre, which is a 4 to 5 story, and then you add by right, you know, more units per acre because they've got some low income in there. Just, this is horrendous. This truly is New York kind of density, well, or whatever. Huge high rises. So that's what I'm afraid of with the new housing element, that what we're gonna see on paper, it's not gonna be that or less, it's gonna be that or more, considerably more. So just.
Well, I think some of that comes into play, right, with the state law. You talked about Larkin Place, and that's, 33 units at Larkin Place?
It's 60 units an acre, because it's on half an acre.
Sure. And you know, Larkin Place is basically being developed under AB 2162. And so under that, there's a number of benefits, developer benefits, if you will, that are granted under that law and others. But I get your point. I get your point, which is the element, you're concerned that the element is the floor and not the median, or not the ceiling, is what I'm hearing you say. And I can look at it. I can look at it with that lens and speak with staff about that.
Mr. Mayor, you got one more question, and then it's gonna have to, otherwise we've got to start paying more money.
Fair enough, Jeff. You have one short question, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for encouraging more community engagement, and part of that, and I've heard you mention it many times, Corey, as well. So part of that is the city council meetings, and we've talked about this, it's not a friendly atmosphere. And the Zoom meetings, they still, as I've stated this several times before, it's got this like 1970s third world camera operation in there, where we can't see you guys, we can't read even your names quite often. We can't see who's at the podium, which is interesting, and we can't see who's in the audience. So it's not very encouraging. And the Zoom tiles, which used to have names, and not everybody has to provide their name, they can just say private or Claremont 1 or whatever they want to say. So the names were removed, and the number of participants were removed. So there's a lot of, we don't know, and usually when people don't know things, they don't participate. So I know we talked about it, and even when we were at the Chamber breakfast with Ed and Perry the other day, twice actually, we talked about the cameras, like, oh yeah, it sounds like a good idea. I know, I myself as a realtor, I can get ADT down there within 3 days and get those cameras up. The school board meeting, they have great cameras. They have a camera you can see, the diocese, I think it's called, they have 2 cameras. And then they have another camera that looks at who's speaking at the podium, and you can also see who's in the audience. You could just, copy and paste that boardroom and just use that in the city. And I don't know why this is taking so long to do, but that's why, there's 37,000 people here in this town, and people are not encouraged to go to the meetings, they're not encouraged to be part of Zoom because they don't feel like they're really there, and then we can't see what's really going on. So how soon can we actually get, I know you're in the business too, how soon can we get some cameras, I think Andre, a few others, have some like a camera operator get down there, put 3 cameras, one that actually is updated for like 30 years, see the diocese, sees who's speaking at the podium, and sees who's in the audience.
So your question was in regards to the camera system in the council chamber, and you referenced some decades, some time ago, but and that it should be updated. We should have multiple cameras in the space. So I agree with you. I agree that we should update our camera system and provide a more clear option and potentially multiple angles. From my perspective, budget-wise and whatnot, I mean, my thought is you can have one facing the dais and one facing out from the dais that you can see the speaker on the left and the audience. So that is something I'm working on, as a matter of fact. It's something I've actually just kind of made this a personal goal, and I actually have a audio-video consultant coming in that I'm compensating personally to come in and take a look and develop a plan of what's necessary to achieve the outcomes that I want to see. And then I want to be presenting that to the city manager on what that looks like. And then it'll have to go through the normal purchasing process, competitive bidding, et cetera, whatever that is. But at least that there'll be a plan that the city manager can see of what that outline looks like and what needs to take place. So as a matter of fact, last night I had an email with the consultant trying to coordinate a date and time to do that.
And the Zoom tiles also, can we get the names back on there? We can know how many people are participating. It is encouraging to know 5 people, are there 20, are there 50? And if some of us see someone that we know, we can comment to each other privately, or we can encourage other people, hey, we don't see you on Zoom, can you join the Zoom? That would encourage what you're asking for, and I've seen Corey ask for it. You know, while Jed was mayor last year, as few people as possible show up, it worked. A lot of things happened last year, the most businesses closed down, crime is running rampant, you know, us as realtors, we got squatters breaking into houses, it's nuts. So
Yeah.
hopefully this year, we can get this going on this quickly, and not this take several months to do, as what's been promised in the past. So, yeah, to get this, I think I think right now it's on seminar mode, which is the most unfriendly public mode, because I know myself in the La Puerta district, the builder had control of the city meeting, which was interesting too. They also put it on seminar mode. And I know several of our neighbors, and you're a neighbor too over there, they raised hands, they had questions, they were never called upon. So it'd be more of a call to action, and we could have more accountability. There are some folks, even at city meetings, like you hear, they lose the plans, I don't think they lose the plans. And people have raised their hand, they've not been called on. It's just the strangest thing. There's just no transparency for something that's so easy to just change it from seminar mode to, what's it called, public mode, or public friendly mode, transparent mode. It would be most appreciated.
Yeah, so I can talk with staff about that. Right now, it's in webinar mode, and that is, I don't know what elements can be modified in webinar mode, but we would have to kind of take a look.
It used to show the tiles if they were removed. Someone just hit but you can just hit a button, I think.
Yeah, so,
Ed, if we could, I hope you can stick around for a few minutes in case there's some other questions or problems. But we want to break down now because we have 2 AV people here, and I want to make sure they're able to get their stuff together and get out of here.
well, with that, thank you again for allowing me to be here tonight, and reach out anytime.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. And I just want to extend a sincere thank you to Ed. I was talking to him before the meeting. I think he's probably the all-star active Claremont speaker, at least since the time I've been involved in Claremont. I think we've had him at least 3 or 4 times. Always excellent information. And I'd also like to extend a thank you to everybody in the audience. Wonderful questions, great dialogue. I appreciate you all for coming. I want to make just one more special announcement. Again, Catherine Barger, March 29th. That's actually the last Wednesday of the month. Normally we meet the 3rd Thursday. Ms. Barger has quite the schedule, so we modified that to Wednesday to fit her schedule. So that's when that will be taking place. Yes, and it will be here. It will be in the big room. It will be in the Padre room. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for coming out tonight. And remember, if you're a member, dues are due. And if you're not a member, you should be. And you can sign up with Brian in the back. Thanks for coming out. Yes, wonderful.